The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Introducing Fidelity Trader Plus, the next generation of advanced trading from Fidelity. Customize your tools and charts and access them seamlessly across desktop, web, and mobile. For faster trades, anywhere you go. Try the all-new Fidelity Trader Plus. Learn more about our most powerful trading platform yet at Fidelity.com/Trader Plus. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE, SIPC.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, host of the Live Like Eden podcast. What do you do when your whole life flips upside down? Are you questioning everything, lost in chaos, or yearning for life's deeper meaning? I've been there, deep in the thick of it, unraveling my own awakening mess for over 20 years. Now I'm here to help you through yours. I share no-nonsense weekly wake-ups, cutting through the ego's illusions to wake you up to your own spiritual wisdom. No mountaintop bliss needed here, just practical tools, insights, and real-life experience to save you time. Plus, a much-needed laugh when we're all losing it. Let's dive into this fresh new episode. Hello, welcome back to another episode. I'm Lindsay, your host, and I'm thrilled to be back to talk about something that I can't even believe I haven't devoted a show to this yet, but it's something that will run through many people's minds when the awakening process starts to deepen and kind of go into the darkness. And it's something that will sound like this in your mind. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I must be going crazy, right? There's no other possibility. I am literally going nuts. There's so much changing in your world. There's so much changing in your perception that the mind, or the conditioned mind, the identity that we've been attached to forever, is starting to panic, right? Because it senses something new. It senses major change coming, and it's freaking out. And of course, this is really normal to start feeling like you're going insane, like you're going crazy. And so the title of today's show is, You're Not Going Crazy, You're Just Losing Your Mind. I hope that you can get a little laugh out of that, because when you feel like you're losing your mind, it feels serious. It feels like, uh-oh, this is a problem. Something's off. But what you're really losing through the awakening process is the attachment to the ego mind. And so, of course, it's going to be very afraid. This is normal. This should immediately calm you down and say, okay, this is part of the process. The reason it's part of the process is you are waking up from the sleepwalker, the ego's identity, the conditioned mind, and the insanity of it all. You're waking up from insanity to become sane. Now, the world will not say this, right? The world says the world is sane. Us as separate identities is sane. Well, that's not what happens when you wake up. You start realizing that, oh my gosh, this is not what I think it is. And our real reality is home in God. And so waking up from that is going to feel different. You're going to start realizing that maybe I'm not this simple mind that I believe myself to be. And the awareness within you, this large observational intelligence field, or a higher intelligence, if you will, is going to start to grow. It's going to become more obvious. As this happens within you, the mind is going to continue to freak out because it senses something new. It senses a much higher power in town, and now it's freaking out. Let's just be real. I'm not sugarcoating this. The mind's going to freak out. And the important thing to remember is that as long as there is an awareness of this freak out, if there's an awareness and an observer sitting there watching that mind freak out, then all is well, even though you don't feel it. But as long as you can see it and observe what's happening, you're stepping into that larger field of awareness. Now, full disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. I am not a doctor of any kind. I'm just somebody who has lived through a major shift in my own consciousness and gone through a lot of this very scary stuff that you just don't hear a lot about out in the world. And I'm here to share it with you. So take what you want from it. But I thought it would be good to do a show about addressing this very issue. I feel like I'm going crazy. And I'm saying, yeah, you might start feeling that way because you're losing that part of the mind that you were identified with. And it's necessary for that part to start to dissolve. It may not be comfortable. It might be downright painful. But as long as there's that awareness that's continuing to grow, it's all part of this transformation. So today I want to present to you 10 common freakouts of the mind. 10 panic moments the mind might have. And there's probably hundreds more, but I'm just going to go with 10 because it's a nice round number for the show that might happen as you walk through your own awakening process. Before I get into these 10 panic moments of the mind, and let's just call them myths, right? Because it is a myth. I just want to say this before we get started is we think we're losing our mind and it's the end of us. It's the end of our world. And it kind of is, right? It's an end to something we believe to be true. But it's really the remembering of what we've always been. So that's really important to remember as I go through some of these things that you might experience. That you're simply remembering something that's always been there, but the mind, that little false self, the ego mind, is terrified. And it's terrified of losing itself. So if you understand that while this is happening, it will make it easier to go through it. If you're walking in blind, like I was, if you're walking in without any preparation or knowledge of this, then it makes the whole process a lot scarier. So that's part of the reason I share this, to help you understand, to give you something that can really make you feel better when this process can be very difficult. So the more light we can shed on a very difficult topic, I think the easier it can be for people in the future. Let's start off with one panic moment of the mind. And these aren't in any particular order, so don't think they have to be like this. I'm just pointing them out. Here's 10. They're in random order that you might experience. And that is this idea that you are now at a point of no return. Like you have gotten so out there, you don't feel connected to yourself anymore. You think you're going crazy. You think you're kind of going off the deep end, like something is happening. I have no control over it. And I think I'm going to get so far out there in this void and I won't be normal, right? I won't be able to function in my normal life any longer. And somehow there'll be a whole story that goes on here, right? You'll start picturing yourself with old raggedy clothes and in the darkest place possible, like down in a deep hole with, no one around you, all alone. Like you'll start having all these different visions in your mind. And your mind will want to tell you all these stories that, you're not going to be able to handle this. This is ridiculous. All these thoughts will just consume you. And it's important to remember to pull into the observer when this happens for you. Okay, I'm stepping out of the nutty thinker and I'm watching those thoughts. And if it's helpful for you, write them down. And if you're somebody who's like, oh, I don't want to write any of that down because what if somebody finds it? Then they're really going to commit me, right? Well, throw it away. Burn it, make sure that nobody can read your stuff, like keep it very private, but write down what is going through your head, this point of no return myth that you're believing, and ask yourself, is this really going to happen? Has this happened yet? That's the other thing. It's probably not even happening, but it's just simply a worry about a future event that's not there. But notice it. So the point of no return, it's like deep down, the ego is terrified of not having control. It's really scared that something else is going to take over because it is. Let me just say it frankly. Something else is going to be in charge, but it's a benevolent, loving, kind energy. It's not something to be frightened of, but the ego will sense it as a threat. So always keep that in mind. Anything foreign to the ego, which would be the spiritual self, the representative of home, the truth of who we are, is a threat to the small identity that we believe ourselves to be. The next thing that might pop through your mind, and this is, I think, is one of the most common ones, was for me, I'm just going to have to check myself into a mental institution. I got to go to the nut house. They just need to take me away. Maybe they'll just give me an invitation, and then I can just go in there, never to be heard from again, right? That's a fear that the mind is running. Now, there are real mental illnesses out there. So people that do struggle with mental illness primarily because they are living that thinker, right? They are so consumed with the mind and believing it that they don't really realize that that's not who they are. So mental institutions can serve people well, and some people who have been in there, they don't serve so well. But the fear that's going to run through your mind is I'm losing my mind and I'm going to be so crazy that I'm going to have a clinical diagnosis and it's going to require institutionalization. My symptoms are out of control. I'm having all this weird stuff. Nobody can help me understand it. And it can't possibly be spiritual. This is just nuts. And so the whole story of the clinical label is going to come into play. And I have to be honest, there are probably many therapists who would not understand the depths of spiritual transformation and may label it as such. I think there's plenty of people today that might fall into that category and might get the runaround in the psychiatric office. You know, people can get into that whole system, and sometimes it can help, and sometimes it makes the whole situation worse. And let's be honest here for a second. The world is really trying to reinforce our mind all the time, right? Because it is how we operate in the world. So the mind, no matter what happens to us, is always something we use to navigate our life. What's happening in awakening is you're realizing that you're not this false self or this attachment to a story in the mind. You're not this identity. And that's the part that is freaking out. When the spiritual mind is seen, right? Because really it's always there. So let's say the ego mind is starting to get smaller. It's starting to dissolve. The spiritual mind and that large awareness feels big. It feels really big. And there's the dilemma for the ego. It's now seeing two. You're aware that there's a decision. There's two things going on. And some people may identify that as crazy. And some things to even ask yourself if you really think you need mental help are, hey, am I behaviorally acting really strange? Like, am I doing really weird things that are harming myself or other people? If you're not, good. If you really go down and ask yourself things like that, like, am I just thinking that all this is weird or am I actually doing it? Because when you're acting and doing it, that's a completely different thing. I'm just talking about a transformation that's going on deep within you. But to the outsider, it would not be known. You're not doing crazy things in the world. You're not trying to jump off of a building and say that you can fly. That's really extreme, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not doing any of that. In fact, to most people from the outside, you will look the same. They may not even know anything is going on with you. Now, you might start to be feeling like you don't want to socialize and all that anymore. So maybe there's that going on. But as far as your personality self, it can stay completely intact. It doesn't have to change at all. So the fear of being labeled clinically is a real thing that will happen. And some people may get that label. And you know what I encourage you? It's okay. It's okay if somebody has labeled you something. Just remember, it's just a label. It's a label that may actually help you understand your own mind. And there's always different ways to look at things. So just because you get a label does not mean that it's the end of the world and it's permanent either. There's always ways for the awareness to wake up and see differently. So I hope that encourages you. So we've got this point of no return. We've got this fear of the clinical label. Then the mind starts really freaking out about its loss of authority, that it will have no control over itself anymore. And it'll say things like, I don't think I'm capable of making decisions, or I don't know if I can do any of this for my family, for myself. But then the question becomes, are you making decisions for yourself? Are you still making decisions for your children and your life and your family and your job? Are you still able to do that? And even if there's a shift where you have things you can't do you feel like you understand what's happening? You can work through these issues by simply asking questions, do serious introspection. But the mind is going to fear the loss of control. And when you really look at all these points I'm going to go through, it's really boiling down to that. It's boiling down to the loss of control, that somehow you will no longer have a say in your life. So that can be a real thing, right? You're worried that you're not going to know what your life's going to look like if you're not in charge, because it starts to feel like there's a switching of the guard. Something else is coming in. It feels more powerful than what I've been used to. And now I'm terrified of losing my own authority. Another thing that might happen is you might be having a lot of energy, right? You might take on, and this may not happen to everybody, but for those of you that do get a lot of energy into your physical system, into the nervous system, and it feels as if you're downloading a very high frequency vibration. It feels like sometimes that frequency and vibration is going to escalate so greatly that your system is going to explode. That's what it feels like. It feels like your system will not be able to handle it. And you think there's going to be like a short circuit in your brain, right? Or call it broken hardware in your body, that the whole nervous system is going to collapse and no longer be able to tolerate the amount of energy coming into the system. This is something normal that the mind will panic over. Now, because the energy is typically out of your hands, it's not something that you sit down in the morning and say, okay, at 12:30 today, I'm going to sit down and stream a bunch of high-powered energy down through my crown chakra and out through my body. It's not going to go down like that. 9 times out of 10, it's just happening. You could be doing anything in your life, whether you're at work, you're walking down the street, you're in the shopping mall, you're talking to somebody on the phone, and you might suddenly feel like you're getting what I used to call downloads of energy into my physical system. And that power that would come through before I was used to it felt like it could wipe me out. And there was a fear, not only of broken hardware, but a fear of being completely wiped out. That's what the mind was worried about. Again, this underlying fear of having no control, having no say, and not even being there, right? This non-existence thing kind of comes in. So think about that. It's probably out of your hands. What kind of energy is beginning to come into the system? Think of it like, would it be coming in if I couldn't handle it? I used to have people say to me, well, the fact that it's happening probably says it's meant to happen. You know? And how you know that is it's happening. You can't argue with reality. In reality, I'm feeling this happen and I feel like I have no say in it. And therefore the mind is panicking. Its fear is that the physical system is going to break down. The body itself will just break down. Even to the point like it feels like I'm just going to disintegrate because there'd be a lot of heat and all this stuff. So again, watch the mind. Watch what it's doing. And then ask simple things like this. Is my body being taken out? Am I actually not able to walk? I might be exhausted and need to lay down, but am I not functioning? Can I not squeeze my fist? Do I have total weakness? You know, is there anything physical that I'm actually losing? Am I paralyzed? In my experience, I was none of that. I just felt an overwhelming overload. And then I would need time to relax. But in my mind, I'm running a story, and the fear was escalating. So sometimes what's going on in our mind is not really what's going on in reality. So check in with that. When you see that your mind's starting to do all these things and create these fears, write down what you're fearing and then ask, is this happening in reality? Is my brain exploding? No, I'm still comprehending everything around me. I'm completely aware of what's going on around me. In fact, I'm hyper aware of everything going on around me. And that's typically what you will find when the awakening process is happening is you're not deadening. It's almost like you're becoming the opposite. You're picking up on everything and then some that you didn't even know was there. So that's the overload. That's the overwhelm. Another common fear, especially for those of you that might have been social people or you liked being out and about, doing things of the world, activities, you like to be going and doing, exploring, traveling, all these things, you might start to have a real fear that you're socially not going to be able to interact, communicate with people. And if people actually knew what was going on in your head, they'd be terrified of you. They'd want to leave you alone entirely. They don't understand you. You're fearing that no one will understand you. And therefore, you don't share it. You might have a few people you share it with, but on the whole, you're not sharing this. And in fact, you're now starting to feel so heightened and uncomfortable, you don't really feel comfortable socially anymore. Many people will mistake this and say, oh, there's a problem. She's socially phobic, or he's just a hermit, or this person is a recluse. And somehow The world says that's a problem. So immediately, if you were a social person and you start to pull away, or even if you weren't a social person and you're even more recluse than you used to be, people will start thinking there's something wrong. And there may be, right? You're uncomfortable. You're very uncomfortable. So you're not really ready to mingle out there in the world, depending on, what's going on with your own nervous system, if you're taking on lots of energy, or you just don't relate to anyone anymore. That happens too. I don't feel like I have anything to talk about with anyone. I'm not interested in the surface level chatter. Something is really shifting in me, and I'm being pulled into something very deep. And if I bring this up, people are going to look at me funny. And some people might, right? I mean, you can never control what other people will do. So this is like a real fear. You might have this fear that you're like a social pariah. And people are uncomfortable with people that aren't social. Have you ever noticed this? If somebody's like, yeah, I don't like any of that. I don't want to be involved in a party. I don't want to be involved in a group. A lot of society will say that those people are weird. And I'm thinking, well, everybody can do life how they want to do life. It doesn't always mean that they're depressed. It doesn't always mean that there's a problem. But during awakening specifically, because that's what we're talking about here, you will start to feel like you're not even from here. This world doesn't even make sense to you anymore. Nothing about the world resonates. And again, most people would say that's a problem. You should love the world. You should feel like a productive member of society. All those things that we hear, you should want to do that. But what's happening in your consciousness is you're waking up to something outside of form. You are waking up to the deeper essence of you that has nothing to do with the physical world. So it's normal that you would start feeling like you are not from here. Maybe because we're not. So what's crazier? Thinking you're a body, or maybe thinking you're not a body? And you're starting to feel that. And so there's this limbo period. It's kind of unsettling, or maybe it's very unsettling. So the social part is a thing, and it will come into play at some point. It might be just in your small family and friends. It might be on a larger scale. It really depends on how you functioned in the world prior to this undoing process.
This spring, Uber Eats has you covered. Whether you're celebrating mom, dad, or your favorite grad, not all of us are great planners, and with the Uber Eats gift hub, you don't have to be. Send flowers, perfume, champagne, or just their favorite meal straight to their door. Gifts arrive in as little as 25 minutes, and you can add a personalized video message for that additional so-not-last-minute touch. So this spring, get a leg up on gift giving with Uber Eats. Last-minute gifts that land every time. Must be 21 or older to purchase alcohol. Product availability varies per region. See app for details.
Did you know your hair ages just like your skin does? The new Chronologies line offers luxurious youth revitalizing care for aging hair. It reverses the 5 key signs of hair aging: lack of thickness and volume, dullness, dryness, and frizz in just one night. Use the full range of Chronologies shampoo, mask, and overnight serum and wake up to visibly fuller, smoother, healthier hair. Shop the new Chronologies line at Kerastase.com.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
The other thing that the ego mind will love to tell you is that if you're truly having a spiritual experience, this isn't it. Because spiritual awakening is supposed to be all blissful and peaceful, right? I'm actually feeling horrible. I'm feeling like I'm losing my grip on reality. I must be doing this whole thing wrong. This can't possibly be what awakening really is, because every time I look it up, enlightenment is somebody sitting on a mountaintop in a state of complete nirvana and ecstasy, and I feel like absolute shit. There's a real story and myth about spiritual failure, that somehow the spiritual process needs to look a certain way. And you could ask yourself that right now. Have I fallen into that trap where I think being spiritual or having an awakening has to look positive? It has to look beautiful in form. Unfortunately, that's kind of what's running in the spiritual communities, is that's the way it should look. The reality is when the mind that we've been so attached to begins to fall apart and the whole identity that we believe ourselves to be is dissolving, it's not pretty. It's actually not pretty at all. And so the process is really one of breaking down and falling apart, but it's not who you truly are. And that's the shift, right? Yes, you're losing your mind, but you're not really crazy. You're actually waking up and becoming more sane than you've ever been. So what I would encourage anybody listening to do if you're struggling with this concept that your awakening needs to be blissful and perfect is write it down and say, why do I believe that? Why do I think that that's the end game? Why am I craving an experience? And maybe really waking up from all of this has nothing to do with an experience at all. Maybe there's something completely different that nobody's really talking about that we're all missing. Because what am I craving an experience for? It's like a temporary moment in time. And if waking up is truly feeling deeply content and at peace, then that's a permanent state of calm almost, not some moment of ecstasy and, orgasmic bliss that everybody's talking about. What about the mind's demon and darkness fear? This idea that the loss of me isn't really spiritual. It's something dark or it's something negative. It's an entity taking over my life. I'm losing my sanity and it's like a demon, right? It's evil and I need to fight it. I need to battle this evil demon because there can be parts of the journey that start to feel so dark that it almost feels like you're being energetically attacked. And it can feel slightly demonic, even though I don't believe that's really what's happening. It might feel that way, though, to the ego's perception of it, if that makes sense. That there must be something evil taking over my life, right? It couldn't possibly be something better. It's something that's very threatening. So from the ego's vantage point, it's going to see it as dark, as evil, as negative, that it couldn't be me waking up to something greater. And because the process can start to feel so dark, you might start believing this. But again, with the observer, you step out of that mind and you look and you say, what is the ego fearing so much? What is this darkness and why is it so afraid of it? Because it doesn't understand, is there something else outside of the darkness? Does it understand that on a deep level, that this deep, dark void that I feel like I'm stuck in, is it possible there's something beyond it? To the ego, it doesn't think that. It thinks it's over. There's nothing beyond it. When you look at it like that, you can understand what's happening inside the psyche. And there's nothing better than understanding what's happening in the psyche, in the unconscious. We could make the case that the awakening process is nothing more than the unconscious mind, the things that we don't really know about because the mind is suppressing them all the time. It's suppressing this separation from God. That when you begin to wake up, those unconscious thoughts are beginning to become conscious. And therefore, we're creating a panic, a fear. It's all rising to the surface to be seen. And if the awareness is not present, if you are not able to join in that observer field and watch your mind, then that's when things get very crazy, right? Madness, which is possible. People can go very mad. And if you look at like shamanic initiation and some of the ancient traditions, the shamans would go mad again, but they would go mad and then they're able to see the mind, see what's going on, access the spiritual world, and they're really building their own strength as a shaman. I mean, they go through this whole wild experience. So fearing that a demon is taking over or the evil side is taking over is a common fear that the ego, of course, would project because in reality, the ego is really the dark side, right? But the ego is going to project that out onto something else. It's not going to take personal responsibility for that. It's going to make you believe that that darkness is happening outside of itself and being done to me. And it will even feel that the spiritual side that's waking up in you is the demon. I'm not saying that every person will go through all of this, but these are absolutely possibilities. There's another really big fear that'll happen, and that is this infinite looping that your mind is afraid of. And what you're afraid of is that you're going to stay in this flipped upside down reality. You're going to be in this complete chaotic state of mind forever. And you're just going to relive it over and over and over again. And that this fog that you feel you're in, and it does feel like a fog, it's like a very dense fog that will never clear. And it's going to be permanent. And you're going to be in this limbo, unsettled state of confusion and disorientation for the rest of your time here. You see what the ego's doing, right? It's projecting the worst possible scenario onto the rest of your life. Because it senses something new in town, it's basically saying to you, you are not strong enough and you are going to fall into a loop that you can't ever escape. You know what's funny about that? The reality is the ego is already doing a loop by reincarnating over and over and over, looping and separating from God over and over and over. So when you begin to wake up, it's fearing that you're never going to get out of the loop. But this loop is a one where you won't be able to live your life. You're going to not know how to function in reality, in society. You're going to lose everything that you think you have. It starts doing that whole saga, not even realizing that that's what it does all the time. So we never see the spiritual self to get us home. You could keep that in mind too when you start to feel like, I'm never going to get out of this. Well, we're still in it. You know? Everybody's in it, but most of us don't even know it. So the fact that this is happening is a clue to you that something's changing. Something is whispering deep within that something here is not right, and it's trying to wake you up. But the ego is going to come out with a vengeance and do everything in its power to make sure that you don't see that. So you can look at this whole fear of infinite looping is the continual cycle that we're worried we're going to stay in. But in the ego's perspective, it's that it won't have a say in that cycle, right? It's afraid that it's going to be stuck in something it cannot control. And that's an accurate fear, because when the spiritual self is large enough within, we choose that over the ego, right? And there really is the end of the ego's world. So here we are at number 9. And my apologies, I haven't been using numbers, but this is number 9. And it's this fear of intellectual death, that if your ego ceases to exist, because the further you get into awakening, you understand now that this is what's going on. My ego is fighting for its life. And the real fear is that if you lose your ego mind, that you'll become a complete zombie, or you'll have no drive to do anything, or you won't have any opinions about anything. You won't have a personality. Like you'll be nothing. You'll just be like this blank slate through life. And so the ego's afraid of that. Well, is that true? Do we really know that? Our ego is always present, even as we live and understand what it is. We can always choose to not believe it. It doesn't mean that it's completely gone while we're living a human existence. But you can choose not to believe it or buy its story anymore, and then it starts to not have a grip over your life. And I will tell you this, in my experience, the personality self is on autopilot. The personality may not change at all, but the personality is really not your essence. Personality is just the script running and how it interacts in the world, the mechanism that you relate to and interact with other people with. And when you feel this part of your mind leaving you, when you feel the ego dissolving, you do worry, am I going to be able to speak and have conversations like I normally do? I used to have that fear. Is anything going to come out and speak through its mouth? Like that would run through my head. How is my mouth and my voice going to speak when I feel myself slipping away? And never one time did nothing come out. The voice always spoke. The personality was shining. I just saw the actress on the stage. And I saw it from a different perspective than I had ever seen it before, which at first was quite scary. Over time, it became very normal because I understood that that really wasn't who I was. It's just how I interact in the world. It's how we relate to one another. So there's a fear of an intellectual death, that you're not going to be able to mingle anymore, but you will. And then lastly, number 10, this goes along with the loss of control, but there's this myth about your safety. Like, if I don't try to keep myself together, if I don't push through this whole thing, then I'm just going to fall apart. Everything I've ever done is going to fall apart. It's almost this fear that if I give up continuing to try to keep myself put together, just blaze through it like it's not affecting me, that I'm worried my entire reality is going to just obliterate. And again, this is coming from the ego, right? It really is afraid of its demise because ultimately there will be a demise of the ego. If the ego is not who we truly are, it will have a complete death at some point. So there's this real safety issue going on. I want to compartmentalize my life and make sure I'm feeling secure and safe in this whole thing. And if I let go of all of that and I just let go of my expectation of this process, I'm afraid it's all going to come crumbling down. Again, that's a real fear that everything's going to fall apart. It doesn't have to. Just because your mind is falling apart does not necessarily mean that your physical reality will fall apart. Some people may experience lots of things in their physical world falling apart, but not everyone will. If the mind is really restructuring internally, for some, the world of form may not change at all. It's just a restructuring internally. It's a shift in consciousness inside that has nothing to do with what's going on in the physical. For others that have a real physical challenge, yes, it's going to change the way they interact in the world. But remember, your awakening process is unique to you. The way that it goes down for you is going to be very different than somebody next to you. There's no perfect formula here. It's however you are meant to live through your own shift in awareness. So trust that whatever process you are going through is meant for you. It's not meant for somebody else. It's not meant for your neighbor. And whatever accounts that you read of other people, read them and find comfort in them. But no, yours is not going to unfold in exactly the same way. That you have your own internal manual. It's not the same for all of us. But the reality is we're all waking up to the same thing. We're all waking up to the larger spiritual essence that we're all connected to that is guiding us home. And these are just a few things that might come up as you start to feel like you're losing your mind, because you are. You're losing your attachment to it. And there may be a period where you start to feel a little crazy. But again, ask, am I physically going crazy, or is this just something going on internally? And when you start to feel these fears and these panic moments that come up in your mind, don't be afraid to sit down, write them down, and question it over and over and over. And what are you learning from the experience? What is your mind showing you? Because when your mind starts doing this, it starts panicking, those are just communications. It's asking you, what is it I'm not seeing? What is my mind calling for here? What could I learn from the situation? And if you stay in that mindset, this whole process will be much smoother than if you're running and spiraling out of control. As we wrap up here, the big takeaway is we absolutely think we're losing our mind. This is a totally normal process. If you weren't questioning your own sanity, then I would say, well, then nothing's really happening, right? But it's really not the end of us. It's the beginning, right? It's beginning the memory of what we've always been, which is what I said right when we started these 10 points. So the 10 things, again, just to go over really quick, the fears of there's a point of no return. You're going to get sucked out into the void, never to come back. You're worried about the clinical diagnosis, being locked up the rest of your life. You're afraid of losing the authority, that you won't have a say in your life. You might be worried that your hardware, the physical body, is taking on too much, and all of your faculties and the body are just not going to function anymore, and you're going to lose your ability to operate. The mind is going to go through the social freak out, that nobody will accept you, you don't relate to anybody, people are going to label you, you don't feel like you fit in. There's the spiritual failure, you feel like this can't possibly be an awakening, it's definitely not blissful. And then feeling like the demon, right, and the darkness is taking over your life. There's something attacking you. the infinity loop, that you're never going to get out of this loop of feeling like you don't know what the hell is happening, that you're in a permanent state of confusion, the intellectual death, that you'll never be able to communicate with people again. You don't think you'll be able to converse and have deep discussion. And then lastly, that whole security and safety issue that if you stop trying to hold yourself together, you're going to just fall apart. These are just 10 common myths that the mind is going to throw at you. And there's probably a million more. You may not have any of these, or you might have a whole list of others. But whatever's going on for you, take the time to write it down and really go inward and see, are these thoughts true? Or is this just a story my mind is trying to tell me to prevent me from accessing that spiritual side that's sitting there all the time? I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. You can email me at info@livelikeeden.com. You can get on my Instagram, which is live.like.eden. You can send me a message on Instagram. I love hearing from you, and I'm always happy to help in any way I can. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. If it resonated, please share, follow, and drop a review with your takeaways. It really means a lot. Visit my website at livelikeeden.com to subscribe for weekly reminders and blogs, or sign up for a free 30-minute consult to explore one-on-one guidance sessions if you're really struggling in Awakening's darkness. Take my Awakening quiz to get a personal podcast playlist that meets you exactly where you're at. See you next week for another deep dive.
Mother's Day has a way of sneaking up on you. But when it does, 1-800-Flowers makes it easy to send Mom something beautiful, thoughtful, and worthy of everything she does. Right now, with double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a bigger gesture with fresh, beautiful flowers arranged to make Mother's Day feel as special as she is. Make Mother's Day feel bigger with double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify.
Struggling with weight loss? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism and target visceral fat. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/now.